Today I'm speaking with Zernul Shackelford. Zernul, thank you so much for joining me today.
How you doing, Tim? Nice meeting you, man.
Nice to meet you. Your name's a bit of a tongue twister, but I'm so glad you're here. And I hear some people call you Z. I can see why.
Yeah,
And this is a
totally.
quick bio here before we get started. Zernul grew up in Chicago, but now lives in Indiana. He is the father of 4 adult children. He is an entrepreneur, a business owner, a filmmaker, a musician, a composer, a writer, a poet, a Marine Corps veteran, and he runs a video production company called Dark Side of Delight Productions. It seems like you've got nothing on your plate right now.
I don't
That,
do windows.
no doing this. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur, business owner, filmmaker, musician, composer, writer, poet, war veteran, and you run a video production company. That's amazing. I can't imagine with 4 kids on top of that, you have too much spare time in your life. But I'm so glad that you're here today. We look forward to hearing your story. Your story is going to be a little bit different than most, which is really cool. Before we do get into your story, though, could you please tell us a little bit more about yourself and some fun stuff, and then we'll get started.
Besides all the stuff you just mentioned right there, I like to, as you can see in the background back there and here, Spider-Man is that's my dude. I was always been a comic book nerd. Marvel for life. I'm not a big DC guy so much. I liked Marvel, I think, a little more because at least at the time they seemed a little more mature, adult versus DC. DC seemed a little more childish. But I always considered Spider-Man to be my dad, and I'm sure we'll get into that as we get into the story a little bit later.
Very cool, very cool. And your video production company is called Dark Side of Delight. Could you just clarify what number one, what do you do, but also how did you pick that cool name?
So, Dark Side of the Light Productions is my video production company. I've been in business now since 2012, and I was working at the steel mill when I created the business, and I just quit the steel mill 4 years ago. Next month, July 4th, is my personal Independence Day. It's actually the same day, July 4th, 1988, is when I left for Marine Corps boot camp. Right after graduating from high school, I was 17 years old, and I do primarily anymore. I do video production for businesses doing their training videos, onboarding videos, recruitment, that kind of thing. I was doing a lot of marketing videos for several years. I don't care for the marketing thing so much. I don't understand marketing like that. I can make an awesome video for you, but I can't tell you why somebody's going to like it other than somebody will like it, so I don't understand the science behind it, all that. And I feel like marketing is, for me anyway, is kind of flighty and trendy and stuff like that. And I'm not a very trendy guy. By the time I use a word that's trending, it's probably 30 years old already, and I'm finally just catching on to it. But with training, I used to train in the Marine Corps. I trained people to get their Class A CDL and things like that. I love passing on knowledge. And I love using video to do that. I think it's one of the best mediums to do that. So that's what we do. Dark Side of the Light Productions comes from, one, my love of Star Wars, because just as much as I like Marvel, I like Star Wars. So you got the dark side. And because of me, I like to have a balance of what I am, the good, the bad, the good, the evil, if you will, whatever the case may be. And I like to use different spellings for things. Like my name is quite odd, so I don't want to just have anything plain. My children's names are all different and unique as well. And so the dark side of the light, is just a play on the balance between the dark and the light, basically. I could get into a whole lot more than that, but
That's awesome,
Rob. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I'm very jealous of your skills. I've been so eager to get more time and means and availability to do that. I'd love to pick your brain someday,
Sure.
privately and maybe even publicly. Who knows? Work together down the line. But a lot of animations and things I want to get into. But I'll save that for another day because it's my skill set's not there yet.
Animation's awesome, man. When you get into it, it's like a drug, man. You can't stop it. I'm creating a video right now, some videos for a course for one of my clients. She already had the course put together, but the company she used in the past didn't quite do the job, and so she wants to revamp the course, upgrade it to modern times. And I've introduced some animations into it that just blew her mind, and she loves it. So I love doing that stuff.
Awesome, very cool, very cool. I will definitely be following up with you on that down the line. Well,
Sure.
we love to hear people's stories. I know that for most people that I interview, I don't know what percentage. I should probably have a percentage that I find out, but there's a high percentage of the people that I interview that are of this group that would say that they fully, deeply, intensely believe in Jesus as their Lord and Savior. Many of them for many years, decades of their lives, were willing to go into ministry and missions and all that. Everything was about Jesus. Everything was about the gospel. Your story is definitely not along those lines. And so we're going to have our story is going to go some different ways, but I'm still looking forward to sort of picking your brain about your perspective, being that your journey has been so different. But before we get into, the journey, could you just tell us about what was your family of origin like? What did they believe? And what was the context in which, you began to hear religious things?
So I hear a lot of people using the term culturally Christian, and I get that. And there were varying levels of Christianity or religion in general. Because some of the people I think were Muslim also, but mostly Christian. In my grandmother's house, we had the painting of Jesus on the kitchen or dining room wall. We always said grace before every meal. I had the little, now I lay me down to sleep prayer that I used to have to say, when I was a kid. My uncle went to church a lot. I went to church with him. I was actually baptized in that church. But honestly, none of it ever made any sense to me at all. Yeah, even some of my cousins were Jehovah's Witnesses. So we were all over the place as far as religion. The only person, oh yeah, and then on my father's side, yeah, I have an aunt who is an amazing pianist. I play 7 different instruments. Guitar is my main one. I have like 12 guitars. I got guitars all over the place. But she with that piano, man, she's amazing. And she's very, very, very deeply Christian. She sings for her church. When my grandmother passed, her mom, she played. I went to the funeral and she played the piano. And man, I mean, the music was just so intense. I loved it. I don't believe in what they believe in, but the power that she and the emotions that she evokes from what she does is just absolutely amazing. I didn't grow up with her. She was on my father's side. But I knew of her and I knew of their church and all that. So on my mother's side, though, where I did grow up, there was a lot of Christianity everywhere, but I wouldn't say anybody remotely close to the way my aunt was and the folks on my father's side. So we were always around it. We did like weird things. I don't know how many other families did this stuff during New Year. When the New Year was coming in, we'd all be on our knees praying the whole time, as the New Year is coming in. And I never really understood why that was happening. And as a kid, especially at the time, I would hear the guns going off, and I thought that there was, because I have a super like insanely vivid imagination. I thought there was like combat going on outside the house, and I couldn't wait to get up the next morning and see the footprints of the soldiers in the snow, which never happened. Man, what the hell? Where are the footprints? They were here. I heard all that. I never understood why we were praying like that and how we had some of these superstitions about a man's voice having to come into the house immediately after the New Year, just weird things like that. None of it ever made any sense to me at all, ever, never. I was always super analytical as a kid, and I remember when I was in 3rd grade, my teacher we were talking about Christopher Columbus discovering America, and I was always the dorky kid who liked to read books all the time. I loved poetry. I loved metaphors. I loved words. I loved to understand words. So I actually, when, we had little book clubs and stuff come around and you could order books and all that when kids were, ordering Berenstain Bears and stuff like that, I was ordering thesauruses and things like that because I just wanted to learn. I always liked that. And when she said Christopher Columbus discovered America, but I'm like, but the Indians were here already. So how did he discover it if somebody was already here? And she just told me to shut up. And I got that a lot. When I asked a question about God or anything, which is always, oh, you don't question that, just shut up, be quiet. And so I would shut up, of course, but I would still question, on the inside, like, why are they believing this stuff? It just never made any sense to me at all. And what really, this is going to be crazy, what really cracked the whole thing for me, what made me go, it's all BS, is when I found out Santa Claus wasn't real. Once that was destroyed, all of it was destroyed. And I found that out completely by accident. I was playing with some marbles one day. We were super poor, super, super, super poor. My mom never worked. My dad didn't work. They were both on public assistance the entire time. My stepfather, anyway, was just a gambler. And at the time, there were no casinos, at least not in Chicago anyway. So it was just a gambler at some dude's apartment somewhere. And he'd be gone for days sometimes just doing this stuff, and we just didn't have any money. But on this particular Christmas, I guess he won a lot and we had a really good booty that year. But I was playing with some marbles and one of the marbles went under my parents' closet door. And so I'm running to go get it. I said, "Oh, the marble went under the door." My mom, knowing where the toys were, she said, "No, don't go in there. I'll take care of it. I'll get it." But she was cooking. So I said, "Oh, don't worry, Mom, being a good kid. I'll take care of it." And I ran and opened the door and was like, all these toys and stuff. I was like, "Oh my God." But this was like 3 weeks before Christmas. So either Santa Claus showed up early or it was all BS, And from that moment, to me, everything they told me was a lie. I mean, I didn't go around distrusting everything, but I definitely analyzed things a lot more. And at least with Santa Claus, I was able to see a result. You told me I'm a good kid. Every year at this time, something shows up, even if it's just a little bit, something actually happens. Um, you know, but with God and Jesus, no matter how much anybody prayed for anything, I never saw anything that made me go, "Oh, okay, that's neat." God showed up, even though I kind of wanted it to happen because I like the whole mystical thing behind it and all that, but it never did. And so when Santa Claus was destroyed, all of it was destroyed.
Can I ask, with the context of your family, were they upset that you weren't professing faith, and was it a context where they were saying things like, if you don't believe that, when you die there's a very bad situation for you because of your sin issue? Like, how did they frame the urgency of your faith?
Nobody really knew, because I didn't go around talking about it. This is the first time ever anywhere that I've openly, just in a public forum, talked about it. Well, I guess you could say that because I with the metal band that I was in, a lot of my lyrics talked about it. Now, whether you understood that or not was a whole other thing, but my lyrics actually talked about it. And I never shied away from it, but I didn't talk about it openly like that. So my family didn't know. They just knew I was different because I've always been different. And I did go to church a lot with my uncle because I did like the music. I ain't gonna lie, the music was amazing, and some of the girls were hot, So there's that. I didn't talk to any of them, but I just like looking at them, and I really just like the music, and I really did want to try to understand what everybody was talking about. But no, there was no pushback or anything. Although, if I could say there was any pushback, my cousins who were Jehovah's Witnesses, I was always into Kiss. I was always into rock and metal, and I don't know where that came from at all. I grew up in the hood, not hood light, not suburban hood. I grew up in the hood. There was no internet back then. There was no YouTube. I don't think even Friday Night Videos had come out even yet, for anybody who knows what that is, So I don't know what made me attracted to rock and metal so much, but I liked it. And this is probably going to be fodder for the Christians. My birthday's on Halloween. So right there, that makes me Satan's son-in-law, at least,
Oh yeah.
And so maybe that's what attracted me to Kiss. I don't know, but Kiss was like it for me. And once I was able to finally actually start finding actual Kiss albums, because where I grew up in the hood, there was just this local mom and pop shop. And to me, there was no difference in music. White people, black people, it didn't matter. Music was just music. And I would go to this little local mom and pop shop every day and ask for the new Kiss album, because at the time there was actually commercials that would come on TV for new albums and stuff when they came out. And I would see the new Kiss. Oh, wow, Kiss just came out with a new album. And I'd run to the store. You have the new Kiss album? And the guy would look at me like, "Man, what are you talking about?" And I never understood why he looked at me like that until one day I was at a store in the suburbs with my stepdad, and I found my very first Kiss album. And I was excited about that. And I looked around. I was like, "Oh, okay. I get it. I see all the white people. So this is white people music, whatever." I didn't care. I started going to get this stuff anyway and just actually picking up, whether I heard of the band or not. If I liked the album cover, I would just get this stuff. Some of it didn't make any sense to me at all. Others I really latched on to. The more creative it was, the darker it was, at least the way it sounded, I gravitated toward that a little bit more. And so my family noticed that. And my cousins, who were very Jehovah's Witness, were trying to get me to throw this stuff away. And especially Kiss, because they were saying Kiss stood for Knights in Satan's Service and Kings in Satan and whoever in Satan's service, whatever, insert K word in Satan's service. I didn't believe any of that. At one time they almost convinced me, and I'm looking at this stuff like, but what if it is true? Because of course, as much as I was skeptical about it, I had no evidence one way or other. But ultimately it didn't win. Kiss won. Satan won, and I kept listening to this stuff anyway, and I became a metal musician myself. So yeah, my family didn't really push back a whole lot. They know, but I've always been the weird one anyway. So it's like, oh, that's just him being him. Yeah.
Amazing. It's interesting you said that. I had the sort of a much lesser exposure to that kind of worldly music, but I had a lot of exposure to messages that said that is bad. They said, if you're going to honor God, this has to go. And I remember getting rid of stuff that I'm sure compared to what you were listening to was pretty low key, like Phil Collins
Yeah.
and Hart and Billy Joel.
Yeah.
But it was
I love those guys though.
Yeah, but good stuff.
Mhm.
Certainly if you got a little more chance, like Def Leppard or something, like no, that has to go.
Oh, for sure.
But very much like if you're going to follow God, you get rid of that stuff. And I had come to Jesus moments where I got rid of all of my cassette tapes, or whatever it was at that point. But it's fascinating how that works, and I'm so glad that you had the freedom to explore what you wanted to do, because a lot of us who are just heavily indoctrinated into this, what we realize when we come out of it and we're trying to heal and figure out what we went through, is that in many ways we were very repressed and suppressed, and the messages that we heard were you have to die to yourself. Would you say, is it fair to say that you didn't really feel that psychological pressure to die to yourself and crucify yourself growing up?
No, I didn't feel that, but I did feel, I don't want to say left out. I just wanted to understand. I didn't necessarily want to follow what everybody was following, but it was very evident that a lot of people believe this thing. And now I get it, especially after watching stuff like yours and Durante and several other people that I watch. It all makes sense to me now. But at the time, it just didn't. And I wanted to understand what it was. But no, there was no pressure from outside for me to convert or, because I wasn't a bad kid either. Right. So like I said, Spider-Man was my dad to me. I didn't have the Bible or anything. And my real father wasn't in my life. I knew where he was, but he wasn't around. My stepfather, while he wasn't a bad guy by any means, I will never, ever, especially when you consider how he treated my brother. My brother's severely autistic. You would think that he gave birth to my brother the way he took care of him. And no, my blood family can't come close to even say anything remotely close to that. But there were no father figures in my life really for me to latch onto. And so Spider-Man was what I latched onto. Peter Parker to me was like me. He was just this dork, this little nerdy kid who a situation fell into his lap that he didn't ask for, and he had to deal with it. And I related to that. He wasn't some rich guy. He wasn't some alien from another planet. He was just a kid who got a bum deal, and he had to deal with it. And that's the way I looked at it with me being born in the hood and all that. I was just a good kid. I never joined any gangs, although there were plenty to be there to join. They probably didn't want me anyway because I was just a total dork. They'd have just all gotten mopped if it was left up to me, at least at the time. I never did any drugs, never did alcohol. There was a lot of alcoholism, and I don't think there was any hard drugs in my family, but definitely a lot of alcoholism. My mom was an alcoholic. Everybody drank, everybody smoked, and I didn't understand that stuff either. I'm watching people get drunk, and none of it made sense to me, man. None of it made any sense to me, and I just didn't want any part of it.
Did you ever see Jesus as and religion as a possible rescuer of some of those more negative parts of your childhood, that maybe if your family was more, consistent and more religious and adhering to church rules, that maybe things would have been smoother?
I can't say that. I would have loved for something to have made things smoother. There's no doubt about that. I mean, yeah, I don't want to paint it like I had a terrible life or anything, but it wasn't great. We were super poor, and it would have been awesome if there was something to help with all that.
What was the closest you ever came to believing? Like, what was the closest memory you'd say where you really, really thought this is worth thinking about and potentially give my life to? Or did you ever come that close?
I never did. I got baptized. I did it. I used to go to church quite a bit with my uncle. Like I said, because I like the music a lot. And I did like the church. I liked the way it looked. I don't know what denomination it was, Christian. And I got a funny story in the Marine Corps about that too.
Yeah, feel free.
Yeah. So yeah, there was never a time. I just wanted to understand it, but there was nothing compelling. I just wanted to understand more than anything else, and I could never get that understanding. And the more I tried to understand, the less it made any sense. The whole Trinity thing, The whole, like if the whole flood thing, like that really bothered me a lot. If you created this way, how could you be mad at it? If God created people, like I hear that watchmaker fallacy thing all the time. If you found a watch in the forest, you'd swear up and down somebody made it. Well, yeah, but if the watch is always telling the wrong time, then it's the watchmaker's fault. If the watch is never accurate, it's the watchmaker's fault. It's not the watch's fault, And so when do we blame the watchmaker? And so the floods, things like that, just never made sense to me. But I wanted to understand why people believe this stuff, because so many did. But I could never come to an understanding with it. It just never made sense ever.
When you have that perspective, I imagine at some point there was some kind of fork in the road where you're realizing that, number one, you don't agree, but number two, that this has implications such as people are going to probably write you off in certain contexts, but also that you're diverging and sort of realizing that there's maybe, I don't know if you would have said this as a child, but maybe as an adult, that they're stuck in something. They're stuck in something that's actually changing their perspective in a way that's not healthy and realistic, and it's eventually toxic. What was it like when you first realized, like, wow, we are really different here, and they think I'm not listening to truth, but I think they're unreasonable, and there's no way for this to come together. What were some of those early conversations like, and what is it like when you think the nearest people around me are stuck in mythology? Like, I can't quite wrap my mind around it from a teenager's perspective.
Yeah, so I didn't really come to that realization until when Obama was first running for president. For a short time, I was a truck driver, CDL Class A driver. I worked at the steel mill first. The steel mill laid everybody off. I was able to obtain my CDL, and because I needed to feed my family, and I drove for like 8 years. Not all over the road. It was local with some regional stuff, so not just little local deliveries. I would definitely go places. And I've gone places that a lot of Black people probably wouldn't go today, for sure. And I never cared. I just never cared. I've been to a lot of metal concerts where I'm the only Black guy there the whole time. Never had a problem. Nothing ever bothered me. But I tell you, man, when Obama was running for president, I actually felt a shift in the entire country. And I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan at all.
Yeah.
When when they destroyed Alderaan, and he said, I just felt a disturbance in the force. It's kind of the way I felt at that point. It was like, holy cow. And all of a sudden, nobody was doing anything in particular, but I could feel a change. And I actually did a presentation on that very thing. I was asked to come into a law firm to do a presentation on for Black history a few years ago, not too long before the pandemic. And, I told them, this is what I'm going to talk about here. I'm going to talk about this shift that I'm feeling. And they said, yeah, by all means, bring it on. And I brought that very thing up, that at that point, I felt this. And just for context, I'm not this gets me into some trouble with some people. Being Black doesn't matter to me, right? I don't go around, I'm Black. I don't care. I didn't ask to be Black. I'm not disappointed that I'm Black, but I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be born in America. I didn't ask to be born to the parents I'm born to. I didn't ask for any of this stuff that's happened to me. So being Black isn't a part of my identity for me. It is for other people who address me. And so I understand that I'm Black, but for me, it's not something that I hold up, at all. Being a father is that part. I love that, and I don't not love being Black. It's just, doesn't matter. I was not a big fan of the whole Black Lives Matter thing. When the people were destroying things and whatnot, I get why some people were angry, but the way it manifests itself, I didn't care for that at all. I thought that we could have done something a lot different than that whole thing. I've been pulled over a few times, definitely for being Black. There's no doubt about that. But I still don't go around blaming people, for things because I'm Black. But when Obama was running for president, I felt the Blackness. Like, it was a very heavy thing. And that's when I really started noticing Christianity more. Beforehand, it was just Christianity. That's what they do, whatever, no big deal. But as things started progressing, I started seeing the danger in it. And definitely when Trump won the first time, There was no doubt about it at all. What this was. I still didn't understand it quite yet. It wasn't until I started watching shows like yours, and you actually introduced me to Durante Lamar. I started watching Durante Lamar, Prophet of Zod, Myth Vision, a lot of these other channels that I've actually started because I just wanted to understand where these people are coming from. Because beforehand, it was just ask these people that believe in this stuff, whatever, you know. But clearly, it was deeper than that, and now I have a deeper understanding of it, and I get where these people are coming from. I don't agree with them at all, but I get where they're coming from, and I understand how we've gotten here, and I think it's quite dangerous. And part of why I kind of wanted to talk to you today is I don't know if I'm going to make any difference at all with anybody out there, but I know that there's a lot of Christians who, probably say you were never a Christian because, of where you are now and all that. But I was definitely never a Christian, but I was also never this heathen that they think all atheists or people who don't believe are. I do a lot of charitable work all the time, and I know according to their theology, it doesn't matter what you do. If you don't believe in God, you're not going to get there. So it don't matter how many charities how many little ladies I help cross the street or whatever, it's not going to matter. But I do those things, and I don't do them for any reward, for anything in the afterlife, because I don't believe there's one. I've never believed there was one. I do it just because this is who I am. Period. I don't get paid for it. Typically, when I do these charities, especially through my business, I don't even do the whole charitable contribution thing for the taxes. I don't care, man. I just do it because I care. Period. It's got nothing to do with rewards and all that stuff. So, yeah.
Well, I was going to ask.
I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go back to some of that, but just since you're on this topic at the moment, I did want to ask. Like there is that question for a lot of us who did deconvert as to what's our purpose now? How do we find meaning? A lot of us feel like we had our meaning wrapped up in the gospel and in our hope of heaven and in the mission to share the gospel, bring people with us to heaven, and to just on the more personal level, just to walk with God, grow in our love for Him and our thankfulness to Him for saving us, and our love of the Bible and so forth. But when you're in that and then you lose it, you feel like you've lost so much. I've used the illustration of like someone gives you a bad check that's for $1 trillion. It's never, you've never actually had it. It's never going to cash. But for whatever length of time you thought you had it and it was real, you convinced yourself this is good news. And then when you realize, oh, it's not, it's a bad check, it's like, okay, now we got a problem. But if you never had the check in the first place, you would have never gotten into that conundrum of like, what do I do now? Life now feels worthless. You just would have kept on walking, and the blank check or the bad check would have never been part of your equation. You would have not dealt with the grief and the clarification of what do I do now. Being that you never had that bad check in your hand, and being convinced that it's real. How did your sense of purpose and meaning change and evolve and develop over the years as you just never got stuck in the muck and mire of it all?
For me, at a very early age, I've always known that I wanted to do music and videos and that kind of thing. There was a little cartoon on Sesame Street about a lowercase n. And the song, I don't know, I was maybe 5 years old at the time. I don't know. I was super young. But the song made me cry. It was such a beautiful little 30, 40-second cartoon about this lowercase n being by itself. So I identified with the N because from a poetic sense, an N is a Z on its side. And so to me, that little lowercase n was me, and I empathized with that little character so much. From that moment, I wanted to tap into that. I wanted to understand why it made me cry, first of all, and I wanted to give that feeling to other people. Through my creations, I like to make people cry. Not because I want to hurt people, because I feel like when you make somebody cry, unless they're really dramatic and good at it, then they actually felt something. People can laugh all day. That was so funny. And then turn around like, this is some BS, man, But when they're crying, again, unless there's some dramatic, then they really have been touched. And so it's always my goal to touch people with my music, with my creations and all that. And that's, for me, been my purpose ever since that day. And I've been doing that for forever. Now I do it for a living. I get to make people cry for a living, and I love it.
That's awesome. Can I ask, did you ever deal with the issue that so many of us from the Christian perspective dealt with, of nihilism, just knowing that at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. You could create a million songs that touch people's hearts, and it's not like you're saving up rewards for heaven or the afterlife. There's no Lamb's Book of Life where they're going to record your name or your deeds. Like, wow, he just did such great things. Let's talk about it now in eternity. It's like it's just going to disappear into the dust, basically. Eventually, did that ever sort of get to a depression, arena for you of like, man, I I wish this counted for more, or being that you didn't get stuck in Christianity, did that did you kind of escape some of the terrors of nihilism?
Death is a weird thing because I sing about it a lot. I talk about it a lot. It's not something I look forward to at all. I can't say that I'd want to live forever, but I definitely would like to live longer than 100 years. If that makes any doggone sense. There's a lot of things I'd like to experience. There's a lot of things I'd like to see. Like I would love to be around if we ever actually make it to Mars. I'd love to be around for that, just to see it. Hell, I'd even do it if there were the chance to do it. I would love to finally, if there is other life out there, which I believe there is. I don't know if we have any evidence of it, but I just feel like it's kind of crazy that we be the only thing in this whole everything, which is possible, I suppose. But I would love to be around when we make that contact, if any contact's there to be made. I'm not afraid of death because I've been around it my whole life, but I'm also not looking forward to it. And I do think about it sometimes, not so much in leaving a legacy, but just in things that I'll miss. My kids, because I love my kids, man. I love my kids so much. And I just want to see them flourish and continue to flourish. I just don't want to miss any of that. But I don't care about what's left behind, whether anybody remembers, because there's been a billion people, gazillions of people that we will never know about. I feel like we have now, and to me, that's what makes life even much more precious. This whole thing about waiting for something after the fact. Oh man, this is it right here. Live it now. And also why I don't understand why people are so angry at other people for living their lives. If somebody's hurting somebody, I get it. But if they're not, who cares, man? Those two guys that are living together, two male husbands, they're not affecting your home in any way, at all. Your cable didn't go out because of them or anything. I just don't understand why we can't just let people live this one life the way you want.
Yeah.
I live every day as if it's the last. I'm not a party person at all. I don't do a lot of adventures and stuff, but every day I work because it's me. Like, I feel, people tell me, why don't you take a break? Smell the roses or whatever it is they say. To me, editing is my roses. If I'm not editing, I feel like I'm lost. I love what I do. Like an eagle. I'm sure if an eagle's not sitting around, I don't feel like hunting today. I'm just going to take a chill pill. An eagle, it's what it does. It hunts, it eats, it flies, it does its thing. I'm that eagle. I edit, I record, I create my music and stuff. That's who I am. That's my purpose. And whether anybody sees it later or not, I don't care about any of that. I do it for me. I do it for the people I love. And that's enough legacy for me.
Beautiful stuff. I'm curious then on the flip side of that, what does it sound like to you when you hear people who come on channels like mine and they share their stories? Like, what does it feel like to you when you hear people say, this was my everything and my life flipped upside down and I was upset about it for so long, and like they're starting over? What are your reflections when you hear some of these intense stories? Because I imagine that it's got to be so different from what you went through. Can you empathize with them in some way? And what levels do you empathize? And what are the takeaways that you reflect on when you hear some of these intense stories?
I can empathize with them, man. And I every time I hear that, it probably comes off sounding really, I don't know, maybe cold. I generally say, I'm glad I didn't grow up that way. And I don't mean it to sound cold at all. It's very heartfelt. For me, I'm sincerely happy I didn't grow up that way. And I feel really bad for folks like you who did grow up with this stuff, especially the ones that had to deal with the abuse. I don't think you dealt with any abuse from what I recall from any of your stories.
I actually did quite a bit, but yeah, there are certainly people that went through a lot more than me, for sure.
Okay, I got you. So and I'm sorry about that, man. I wish it hadn't happened. I wish we could stop it. I don't want to eliminate religion so much, and I'm kind of torn on that anymore, because I know for some people it grounds them and it keeps them centered, and that's a beautiful thing. But I I definitely empathize with people who've gone through that, and it also helps me to understand where we are now as a country, because so many people have been affected by the exact same things in some way or other, and they're all indoctrinated. I was at an event the other day, and we had to stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I have a whole different relationship with the Pledge of Allegiance now, man. I think about that. We tell kids this to recite this before they can even spell cat. They don't even know what cat means yet, and they're already saying Pledge of Allegiance. They don't even know what the word. Half the people who say this thing don't even know what these words mean. What's allegiance? They don't really know. A lot of them. It's just a word they use. Um, it sucks, man. It sucks, and I think we're so far. I think it would take forever to pull us out of that. But I think channels like yours and some of the other ones that I watch, I think help in that respect. Which is why I'm glad to be here, because I wasn't one of these people. I wasn't affected by the same thing, and so I feel like that can help in some way. Somebody somewhere might hear this and know that it's okay just to be you, be an individual. It's all right. And I feel bad for a lot of these people that went through this stuff, man. I'm just glad that I did not.
Does it ever strike you just the bizarreness of some of the beliefs, like
oh God, yeah,
the blood magic and all that? Like, to me,
oh God,
I hear it from other people, of course, and it's easier to hear it when it's someone that has a different spin on it. Like if I'm listening to a JW or a Mormon, or especially if it's something really weird, like, to me, like Muslim beliefs are like, that is so weird. Like, how could you not see it? But then when you're really just, you turn the mirror on yourself, like, I should have seen the weirdness of this. I mean, especially to me, the big ones that I was focused on probably too much are circumcision is so weird to me that you would think about mutilating a boy's genitals, but also the idea of the communion, the Lord's table, where you're pretending to eat a dead man's flesh and drink a dead man's blood. Like, is that not really, really weird to you? And do you not see like the paganism that you're so concerned about? Like, we don't want to be like the witches, and we don't want to be like the whatever, the Wiccans and the Satanists. Like, they're the weird ones. Like, do you not see how weird it is to say your God wants to mutilate a boy's genitals and you want to pretend to eat a dead man's body? Like, that is really freaking weird. Does it strike you like how do you all not see it? It's so obvious. Because like the Santa Claus thing is a good example. I've used it before, but not as much as I probably should. That's a really good one to keep at the front of my mind. But like, Santa Claus is pretty obvious by the time you're whatever 6, 7, 8, if not before, that there's something more to this story. And eventually certainly by like 8, 9, 10, if not before, you get it that like this is not real. Despite all the fun movies out there, and the movies are fun to watch. That's where you like the character doesn't believe, and then they realize, oh, he actually is real, and
yeah,
I should have believed this whole time. They're fun movies, but as in real life, you know that it's not, and yet there's something about religion that makes us somehow, it puts it in a different category. Like, what were the weird things that stand out to you as you look at stories like mine and others?
Yeah, all of that, man. The whole blood thing doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get how people are okay with this stuff. It's just, I think a lot of it comes from folks not actually reading the Bible in totality. I think if they actually did, they'd probably come away with a different feeling about it. I guess, I suppose. I actually wrote a song in one of the bands, the main metal band I was in, called Feed My Darkness. And in the lyrics, it's actually a lyric video. It's on YouTube. It's actually on my channel, I think, if you want to look it up. But
yeah, I'll have the link beneath this video for all that.
Okay, yeah. In that song, people think that I'm singing as the devil because of the lyrics, but it's God. This whole thing is God saying all of this. And if you put it all in context with what it says in the Bible, and you look at my lyrics, you can't deny it. It sounds like the devil because of the way I'm singing and all that, but it's all God. The same thing with another song we made called The Death Effect. And it's spelled affect, AFFECT, meaning the affection with death. And the whole song is just about this biblical, just love of death. Every lyric is about that. And it's also a lyric video too. That one's a lyric video on steroids though. That's a lot of animation. I think you'll appreciate the animation in that one for sure. So I've always found that to be fascinating, how there's just this disconnect that people don't, like you said, they see it as a problem in other religions, but not in their own. For the longest, I wouldn't say for the longest, for a while when my children were very young, I was doing the Santa Claus thing with them too, even though I knew it was all BS, but it's fun and blah, blah, blah. And so one year at the trucking company I was working for, one of the guys that worked there as well, he looked just like Santa Claus. He's this older white guy, long white beard, wasn't quite as heavy and jolly as Santa Claus would be, but he looked like Santa Claus. And so he actually told me one day, he said, yeah, man, I go and I play Santa Claus for the kids every year and I love it. So me being the video guy, I had this wild idea. I said, how cool would it be for me to actually capture Santa Claus bringing the toys to the house? And so I bought him his Santa Claus outfit. I said, you can have it for the rest of the year. Go ahead and do your Santa Claus thing. I just need you to show up to my place and I'm going to record you delivering toys. And so I made this whole magical video, Rudolph landing on the roof and all that. You didn't actually see Rudolph. What you saw was a red light that I shone from the outside into the window, so you could see the red light come across the window. I had the jingle bells going and all that. And then Santa Claus magically appears in front of the tree because we didn't have a chimney, so he couldn't come down that. So he appears in front of the tree, takes a look, creates the toys in front of the tree, looks over to sees the cookies that we left behind, takes a bite, and then disappears. And then Rudolph takes back off again. So the night, and we had shot that my ex-wife and I had shot that a week before Christmas. My kids were at their grandmother's house at the time, and so the night before Christmas, I said, hey kids, how cool would it be to set up a camera and capture Santa Claus? And they were like, oh yeah, we're doing this, So we did it. When they woke up the next morning, they opened up all the toys. They're super excited. And I said, I'm going to go down and check the tape. They said, okay. And I said, we got it, you guys. And we popped it in and they were so freaking excited, man. We got it. We got proof. We got proof. But my second daughter, she knew of my ability to create videos. And she was probably about the same age I was when I realized Santa Claus wasn't real. She looked up at me and she said, Dad, you can do this with the computer. And she said, did you do this? And I looked at her and I was like, oh shit, this is deep. And I said, well, what do you believe, baby? And she looked at me and she looked back at the TV and she looked back at me again and she said, we got proof. Yeah. And I felt so freaking bad at that point. I'm like, man, this is crap, because I'm totally lying to her right now. And she figured it out, but I'm still lying to her. My ex-wife and I had created a Santa Claus at something.com that my daughter was emailing Santa Claus back and forth about. And for Christmas, one of her little girlfriends had only gotten clothing. She didn't get any toys. So my daughter wrote to Santa Claus, hey man, what's your problem? My friend only got clothes for Christmas. Why didn't you get her any toys? And she was mad, seriously angry about this whole thing. And I told my wife, I said, man, we gotta pull the plug on this. I can't keep lying to her about this. This isn't cool. And so we slowly tried to tell the truth, which actually made her even angrier. And I couldn't even be angry at her for being angry because I get it. I didn't like it when it happened to me, and so I apologized to her, told her the whole deal. The year after that, though, because I still wanted Christmas to be fun. It didn't have to be this whole Santa Claus thing. I created Mr. X, which was X for Xmas. And it was, they woke up in the morning, and instead of there being a bunch of toys, there were just these two little teddy bears with sunglasses on and masks on their face. They looked like little terrorists, and they had a note that they had to read. And when they read the note, it led them to another clue somewhere. And so basically like a little treasure hunt. They had to go around through the house, finding all this stuff. And every year that grew. They loved it. It was just this awesome little thing that we did. So they could still have fun for Christmas and not just be just a bunch of toys being given. But it didn't have the whole Santa Claus Christian thing all wrapped around it. It was just our own little internal thing that went on for years. And they still like it now, even though they're all grown. They still like it. We don't do it as much because it gets really complex, but I'm going to surprise them again one year because they're all over the place. I'm going to make it really intricate and do something for them.
That is so cool. It is an amazing journey to think about how much our kids inspire us to be the best we can and to bring beauty and joy and love. And I love too the fact that you're, with you being spared so much of it, that you're able to spare them as well. I was just going to make a quick comment too. I think just the whole FX and CGI and AI now, the ability for all of us to watch or even create things that are like sleight of hand. Sleight of hand at this point isn't just a magician's trick. Like, you can do it on a
Mm-hmm.
computer in 3 seconds, and you've got it. And I think it definitely serves a purpose. I mean, the internet and YouTube and things like that served a purpose in just bringing more information, but just knowing how easy it is to make up a story and to make it look realistic. And especially if you think about, an era when people lived average age of probably 30 years old, and most people
Mm-hmm.
couldn't read. It'd be very,
Mm-hmm.
very easy for the one person who's wealthy, who can read, who's got
Mm-hmm.
political power, to just kind of say, hey, it happened. And, if you don't believe, I'm going to kill you.
Yep.
It'd be so easy for religions to have started. And our scope for the imagination as to how these things evolved and began is so much clearer now. And I think it's harder and harder for people to not think, at least consider, maybe this is made up, because now we're looking at
Right.
every video. I mean, we're like, our eyes are trained. I'm sure someday it's going to get really hard, but everybody can look at a video now, especially the little shorts that come up, and like, you what looks like it's fake. What
Mm-hmm.
you look for the details, you look for the fingers, or you look at
Mm-hmm.
the details in their eyes, you look for the cars. There's some I've seen where the cars are supposed to be going that way, but you see them going backwards. You're like,
Yeah.
clearly that's AI. You got it wrong. But
Yeah.
it'll go harder to detect that, I'm sure, eventually.
It
But
will.
for now, like you can be like, my spidey senses are up. I'm going to use
Yeah. Yeah.
your illustration. My spidey senses are up, and this doesn't smell right, and something's wrong here. We can do it with all kinds of video content now, and it's going to get harder and harder for people to say, why would you think that discernment that you've developed doesn't apply to world religions as well? And
Yes.
it's I think it's crazy that for us who grew up in it, there really was this message of, don't ask too many questions. And it wasn't that
Mm-hmm.
they would have never said they were afraid of questions. They would say, ask all the questions you want. Jesus, God's not afraid of anything. He's the truth. And the big thing that we were always told in Bible college was that quote from Pastor Charles Spurgeon from a couple hundred years ago, where he said, you don't need to hide. The Bible's like a roaring lion. You don't even need to defend it. Like, you don't defend a lion. You just let the lion loose, and he'll defend himself. The Bible's like that. You just let it loose, it'll defend itself. But in reality, there's very little information that you're actually given as a Christian. I memorized entire books of it. Went to Bible college, to mission school, all the just endless things. I was soaking it up as much as I could. It was my lifeline. It was my everything. And yet, despite my supposedly vast amount of knowledge, looking back at it from the point of my deconversion process, I knew almost nothing about where it came from and
Mm.
how it evolved. And all the hard questions, even simple questions like, how do you know that these 66 books are the right ones, and who wrote
Right.
them? And how do you
Mm-hmm.
know that they're not changed substantially? You get the apologetic Sunday school answers, and you just kind of say, yeah, that sounds good to me. I guess, God did a good job writing this and preserving it, and these are the books that he wanted. But when you actually dig deeper, you're like, nah, that doesn't sound right anymore. There's more to this. There's a lot more. There's like a ton more to this story that you guys didn't tell us. And we could go on about that for a while. But the point is, you get to the point where you say, this doesn't sound right anymore. And I think it's really cool that our society is probably entering a phase where our bullshit meters are going up,
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
more sensitive, and it's going to be harder and harder to trick us in some ways. I mean, in some ways, I guess you could argue, well, no, the AI is going to get so good they could trick us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's scary too. But at the same time, I think we're all saying to ourselves, is this real or not? How do I know? And you almost like, even if something looks real, there's a party that says, I, I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
I think it's real, but I'm still going to suspend my judgment, because there's a part of me that just there's something that feels wrong about this. And I think especially for religion, it's so cool that, and I hate to say, that we're connecting the dots with what's going on now with, Trump's America and his government, but like, you look at what he's done, and you look at the government and the way that Christian nationalists are so, in bed with him, despite, all I said already about, your spidey senses being sensitive about mythology. Now your spidey senses are up about, does Christianity lead where it said? I was reading the Sermon on the Mount, and talking about giving take everything you've got and give it to the poor, give it to the needy, take care
Mm-hmm.
of the stranger in your land. And here the Christians are basically creating a government to say, let's get rid of all the strangers, and let's get rid of all the, no longer take care of the poor people. Like, okay, so this wasn't actually about Jesus this whole time. This was just a cultural thing. This was maybe about white supremacy. It was maybe about, you want 1950s Leave It to Beaver era stuff. You want the the Little House on the Prairie, whatever. You
Yeah.
you want this to be homogenized. You certainly want control for sure, and you don't want diversity of almost any kind. I get it now that that's what Christianity is about. And between the mythology and the cultural Christianity stuff, it's just like your spidey senses get so sensitive, and you get
Yeah.
it's almost like you want to vomit. Like none of this stuff is real. This is just disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's great that people like yourself are one, thankfully, I'm happy for you to have found your way out of it, right? But it's great that people like you actually have a voice and are helping to push back on that narrative as much as you can. I think their machine is stronger, definitely much more financed, better. They have a much larger reach, but you still have a reach, and I'm glad that people like you are around to tell your stories and are giving a voice to other people to tell their stories. Because even if my story doesn't touch somebody, anybody, one of your people that you've interviewed will, for certain. I've watched quite a few of them, and I watch you all the time. I can't wait for you. I like the longer form videos to the short stuff. I like that stuff. I like hearing these people's stories. It's really interesting to me. The similarities and the differences between so many of them, but the fact that you have given so many people a voice is absolutely amazing. And I applaud you for that. I'm jealous of you for having the reach that you have and the ability to talk to so many people and to help, because what you're doing is helping. And I've been silent for quite some time, but I'm tired of being quiet now about it. And I feel like silence is complicity in some ways. I am recording a cover of Marilyn Manson's The Beautiful People. I've already recorded all the music. I just got to do the vocals now, and I'm going to make a music video for it. It's the first political video I've ever created. I do have a song with that band that I was in called The American Way, but we never did get a chance to shoot a music video for. I'm no longer with that band, but I'm probably those are my lyrics. I'm probably going to take the lyrics and make a video from that as well. I'm just kind of tired of being quiet right now. I don't like where things are going at all. And if I don't at least say something, then I feel like I've helped to just usher this thing in some more. Whether what I say makes a difference or not, at least I've said it.
I love it. I love that passion. I did have a bunch of questions I want to ask more about your journey, but I know you mentioned a while ago that you had a Marine Corps story you wanted to share. Do you want to take us back to that, and then we'll go back to your story?
Yeah. So I joined the Marine Corps at 17. A couple things about that. One, you have to be 18 to join the Marines. So at 17, you had to get your parents' permission. You have to sign a waiver that says it's okay. Ironically, I wanted to be in the Boy Scouts, and my parents didn't let me go to the Boy Scouts because they said it was dangerous. But the Marine Corps wasn't. So I was like, wait, what? I didn't say anything to them about it because I didn't want them to change their mind. But I was like, how's that okay? But whatever. So I joined. When we were in boot camp, again, I had no religious affiliation at all. But every Sunday, you had an hour to go to whatever service you wanted to go to. And so they would ask the platoon, what's your religion? What are you? Blah, blah, blah. People would read off their stuff. And I just said Christian because I didn't know. No, I'm sorry. I said Catholic because I knew it started with a C. It was the only one that I heard that started with a C, So I said Catholic. And I realized right away when I went to the Catholic Mass that I had never been to a Catholic Mass a day in my life. That was the most unique thing I'd ever seen. Because at the black churches, man, the music's jumping. Everything is different. It's loud. This was not that. So that was funny to me. But I continued to go to the Catholic one. Not because I believed in any of it, because it was just an hour break from everything. And it was just something to do. I found it weirder than the other ones that I've been to because of the whole, the little wafer thing. Every Sunday we did this thing with the wafer, all the getting up and sitting down and the chants. The first time I heard the repetition, actually kind of freaked me out a little bit, because I hear other stuff about cults and Satan and all this other stuff. And then here they are, peace be with you and also with you. Like, oh, hold on for a minute, man. What is that? And it still kind of cracks me up. I go to Catholic Mass every now and then with friends for whatever reason, and I'm respectful. I don't believe in any of it, but you know, there's no reason for me to be in there being a jerk about it or anything, so I'll go with them just to go. But it still fascinates me how one, they even know this stuff, and how indoctrinated you have to be for everybody to get up, almost like a military thing. Almost everybody get up and sit down at the same time. It's just weird. But yeah, that's my Marine Corps story.
Well, going back to more current day, what was it like growing up with, or getting to a point where you were getting married and having kids? Like, how did you get to a point where you had to have some hard discussions, maybe with loved ones, about how your kids were going to be raised? And just as you looked at them, what were any things that you had to think through to say that they could be like, all it takes is one generation to get sucked right back into fundamentalism? How did you end up sort of protecting your kids in some ways, or at least thinking through the best way to raise them and to love on them, but also to give them that better shot at escaping mythology-based worldviews than perhaps some of your friends did?
So lucky for me, my ex-wife, she wasn't religious at all either, or not very religious. I think her family was probably similar to mine in a lot of ways. I don't really know if her parents were super. They didn't talk about that a lot. I didn't see any pictures of Jesus and stuff. I know they believed in God, but I don't know how religious they were. So, luckily for us, that wasn't a big deal. And when my kids were growing up, what I didn't want to do is to make that choice for them. So, of course, they would see other kids and stuff and churches and things like that, and they would ask questions and all that. I said, well, hey, baby, this is what this is. This church is that. I said, if you ever want to go to any of these churches or anything, let me know. We'll go. We'll just go check this stuff out. And I gave them that option. We went to a couple churches. They didn't like it because it was boring. They were kids. It was like, no, this is cool. We're out. So I didn't push it, but I also didn't keep it from them either. It's they grew up. They started asking more questions and stuff, and we would just have conversations. I would never tell them this is BS. I never told them that, even though that's how I felt. But we would just have our conversations, and I would just let them self-regulate that, and none of them are religious at all. They kind of feel the same way I do, I guess, for the most part. They're just not vocal about it. But yeah, there was no way I was going to raise them any of that. When my wife and I got married, we got married at the county clerk with everybody else. We were just in a line. Everybody, next. All right. Do you? Yes. Do you? Yes. You're married. And we were out, got our marriage certificate, and that was it. No churches, any of that stuff. I'm glad we didn't have to go through all that. So yeah.
Did your kids ever sort of ask you anything to the point of where you thought, sounds like they're getting a little bit of indoctrination or propaganda, or getting tricked from somebody, or even just that threat of like, hey, so-and-so down the street said if I don't believe like them, I'm going to burn in hell? Did you ever hear that?
No. Luckily, that kind of thing never came up. And I always gave my kids permission to just talk. Just, it's okay to say what you need to say. I mean, I'm sure there's things, because all of my kids, well, so I have 4. They're all adults now. 3 are women, and I have a trans son. But I've always given them permission to talk. So, of course, because of the male-female dynamic, I'm sure there's things they didn't talk to me about that they talked to their mom about. I guarantee you that. But for the most part, yeah, we had a very open dialogue with each other, I would say. And, if they wanted to talk about anything, that was fine. I can't think of anything at all where I felt like they were being indoctrinated in some way. Although I will say, with one of my daughters, if there was still a Black Panther party, she would probably be in that right now. She's not radical by any doggone means, but Black 100% matters to her. Being Black absolutely matters to her. And so if there was some thing like that, I don't feel like she would get radicalized or something like that, 'cause she is definitely her own person as well. But if it were to happen, it would be that.
Wanted to sort of go back to something we talked about earlier briefly. You said something along the lines of, you don't necessarily want to remove religion from this world. And it's interesting. You made me think of a video I'd seen with Christopher Hitchens. Christopher Hitchens?
Mm-hmm.
So he was asked that question once. If you had a magic button and you could hit it and religion would just disappear completely from this world, would you push that button? And he ironically said, no, I wouldn't push it, which is very strange. I would have thought for someone like him who was so anti-religion, he would have possibly said yes. But he said, no, I wouldn't push the button. But when you do look at this world, it seems like for a lot of us, we see the vision of a more beautiful world, a world without wars. Certainly, I can imagine that if the Middle East, for example, had no religion, that
Hmm.
it would have a much greater chance of the wars dropping, if not just completely being eradicated. Certainly, there's other reasons that people fight besides religion, but religion is either the main reason for a lot of division in our world, or it's at
Hmm.
least a way that people justify themselves. I feel like God's on our side. Um,
Hmm.
when you look at all that and a million other aspects of our world, whether you're talking about the serious hyper nationalism, looking at things like even child poverty and childhood diseases, there's so many ways in which our world has so many inequalities and so many heartbreaking things, and not everything is a one for one, or you could connect the dots to religion. But for a lot of us, we would say that either religion is related to the conversation, or it's religious people who, even though they wouldn't say religion's making them do bad things, it's religious people that are often the decision makers, whether they're truly religious or just saying it for votes. But they're getting voted into office for the profession of I'm a Christian and I'm a religious person. That's why you need to pick me, and I'll make the right choices for our country and our world. That we feel this angst of like our world is so much better, and I think part of that for me is even things like Star Trek, where you'd see the potential for a world where diversity is completely normalized, and
Hmm.
people aren't living their lives for money, they're living their lives to make the world better and so forth. And you'd see so much beauty in your dreams, even thinking of like John Lennon's song Imagine, and you just think there's so much better that we can do with our future, and so much that we want to give to our kids. But for a lot of us, religion is the barrier. It's not the only barrier. Certainly, again, things like I think a lot of inequalities financially,
Hmm.
a lot of money inequalities are behind a lot of the issues. But still, there's a part of us that just says we're better than this. Like you almost look at the news every day and think we. I'm concerned about what's happening today and what happened yesterday and what's going to happen tomorrow, but just I'm also concerned about the trajectory of our culture. We have come so far from the tribalism and from the barbarism of being animals. We used to literally kill each other because of fighting for land or whatever. The tribalism, and you can see how we got here, because we come from animals. Hunting was our main goal. We have evolved from it, and we're proud of the fact that we've evolved this consciousness that can say, whatever, 300,000 years ago, it wouldn't have been a big deal to anybody to kill a baby. Now, thankfully, it is. We've evolved from this stuff. And we're so grateful that we value life. We value people's autonomy more and more. But we have so far to go. And it's like, come on. You just have to like grab me by the shirt, gently, but like, come on. Don't you want a better world than this? And it's like, no, we're going to drag ourselves back. We're going to drag ourselves backwards to the dark ages or whatever, or much worse. And it feels like this is a time where, again, big doors move on very small hinges, and like, what can we
Hmm.
do, and how can our dreams, even though we feel like a vocal minority in some ways, how can our dreams eventually become the bigger chorus to say we all have a shot at giving the future generations so much better than we have, but it has to include us putting some of these old ideas in our past and saying we're done with that way of thinking. What are some of the things that come to your mind when you have those dreams, and just what would you want to do to make this world a better place, knowing that you've seen the beauty of living a secular life, knowing that you've escaped some of the worst parts of this, you've never even gotten stuck in that stuff. It's almost like you have a clearer vision because you've known what it looks like to live a beautiful life, and at least in your mind, of saying I'm not going to live according to the bullshit ideas and the mythology. I'm going to be free. um, how would you want the world to understand the beauty of that, and how would you want to change the world if you could?
I don't know. That's a lot to unpack there, man. I think for me, one of the reasons why I wouldn't push that button also is that I think for a lot of people, community matters. Communities never matter to me. I prefer to be by myself all the time. I am 100% okay being by myself. I've never done team sports and stuff. As a matter of fact, I'm the guy you probably don't want on your team anyway, because if you want to win, no, don't have Z on your team. Um, but I feel like everything almost everywhere hinges on belonging. And there's nothing wrong with belonging, but I think belonging becomes the top of everything. You have to belong to this. You have to belong, instead of belonging just being a choice, right? I think it would be awesome if we could celebrate individualism and just people just being themselves, and letting those individuals join different groups in and out as they want, but not having to adhere to any particular thing, to stay in any particular group all the doggone time. I think there's a lot of money and power and control that help keep these people in power, through community and that kind of thing. But I feel like if we were to, again, celebrate individuality more, there'd be a lot less of that, and that we could still have community without having to feel like you have to belong. I've never felt like I had to belong. The only thing I ever belonged to is my family. But everything else, not so much. But we don't celebrate that at all. Everything is about being part of something. Let's be part of this community, be part of that community, be part of this thing, be part of that thing. And I guess for some people, they need that. They don't feel whole without being in that. But I don't know if they don't feel whole because they just don't know that it's okay to not. If that makes any sense. I don't know if I made any sense at all. What I just say right there.
I think another way to say it too is that from the Matrix movie, a lot of people just
I love that movie.
They're ready to be unplugged. Like
yeah.
The idea of and they did a good job in that movie of painting the idea that not just were people plugged into a matrix, which is itself concerning that it's fake, but also that the real world in that storyline was very dark and very ugly and very messy and very like you're probably going to die soon. There's no real life here. They've scorched the sky. That's just like it's a dead planet basically, and the matrix is like a dream world. And for a lot of people, I think the reality of this real world is just they can't take it, whether it's the nihilism or the idea that I don't have an afterlife to go to, whatever it is, like it's just too much. And the idea of like I want the safe story. People just aren't ready for that, and it's heartbreaking because like I love that phrase, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And I do at times wonder, if you had someone that's they're just happy as a clam, like just like I love my Jesus. I know he loves me, and I'm going to get to his, the other other side of the banks of Jordan soon. And boy, is it going to be beautiful. And I'll have a reunion with, Aunt so-and-so and Uncle so-and-so. It's going to be beautiful. All my cousins will be there. Everybody will be there. And most importantly, my Lord and Savior will be there. And it's like one big cuddle fest. It's just like, I want my safety blanket. And I get it. Like I get it. But it's also sad to think, you've literally lived your life in a story like it was if we had movie theaters, movie technology back then, it's like you watched the Avengers and your whole life became celebrating the fact that they're real and that they can protect us safe. You're like, no, they're actors. But like, no, they're not actors. They're real people, or whatever it is. Or they watch Thor, like, thank God, thank Thor that he's there and he's going to protect us. You're like, no, do you not I can take you to the green screen room and show you how they made these movies, but it's like they can't imagine the green screen of Christianity, and so therefore it keeps them safe. But it's very sad to me to live your life in a way where you don't examine it. And I agree that people need to have the diversity as well as the freedom to think what they want to think. But I'm also heartbroken about the fact that I literally grieve all the time, especially for my loved ones, that they're stuck in it and they're never probably going to really live a day in their lives. And when you go through it and you heal, you realize this stuff messed with me. I mean, it really messed with me. It was something that was done to me, and it changed my perspective on everything. I was not myself, and I didn't even, not just do I need to now understand myself, I need to understand the filter to understand myself. Like the filter's messed up. You can't even get started with the hard questions till you fix the filter to understand the hard questions. And it's the upside down. And I wish the people could see what's at stake. And I know that they would say the same thing, like, yeah, but you don't understand what's at stake. Pascal's wager, you're going to burn, and you need to see the world potentially as different. But I spent 40 years in that world, so I have entertained the thought quite a bit. But it just breaks my heart. It breaks my heart too a lot that kids will get kids will get abused in this, not necessarily physically all the
That
time, but
that
there's
part scares me.
psychological abuse.
That part scares me, man. There's a very prominent church that's been in the news quite a bit, not far from me. And I was riding my bike one day, passing by it. It was on Easter, actually. And I'm watching these kids going there, and I just feel so bad for these kids, man. I'm like, I don't want to say they don't have a chance, because obviously they do, but it's a slim chance, of coming out of this stuff at all. And they're just walking into this thing being completely indoctrinated. And I wish I could just say, don't go in there, run from the light, yeah, it sucks, man. I feel bad, but all I can do is my part, and hopefully somebody sees or hears what I'll do and change, or somebody else sees and hears what you do, change. Yes, that's all we can do right now is hope for that. Like, 'cause I wouldn't feel, at least right now, I wouldn't feel comfortable eliminating it altogether, though it wouldn't hurt my feelings. So let me just make that clear. It would not hurt my feelings at all if it was gone, not even a little bit. But I wouldn't actively pursue trying to completely destroy it. I do think it has its place in some way, for people who need community, for people who need that, like you said, that safety blanket. Because the human mind is very complex. Things that make me comfortable make somebody else feel extremely uncomfortable. And there's no one thing that can work for everyone. And so some of these things, people need this stuff. And for some people, clearly, they need the threat of hell to, not do the wrong thing. So by all means, let's keep that guy in check if necessary, whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like I said, I wouldn't push the button, but it wouldn't hurt my feelings if it was gone.
Yeah.
Because I do think it's quite destructive, even for those that it helps. I think it hurts more than it helps, without a doubt.
Yeah. I had two last questions, and then I also
Sure.
think of anything else you wanted to share. When you hear people going through the discussions about religious trauma recovery, what are the things that you would wish for them when you hear people talking about the pain that they've gone through? Not just the pain of like realizing this wasn't real, but the pain of realizing that they had so many messages sent to them of shame, and you should be seeing yourself as worthless, and as the Bible says your even your good things that you do are like filthy rags, and you shouldn't trust yourself, and certainly purity culture stuff where you're sort of endlessly ashamed of your sexual desires. When you look at people going through that, and you think to yourself, I'm sure that you've escaped the majority of that, I think. What would you wish for someone going through the hardest parts of their religious trauma to think through, to be able to get to a better place?
And I would wish that they could definitely find the strength within themselves to accept themselves, to be okay with who you are, whatever that is, whoever that is. I'm sure it's not easy. I've never had to deal with that. I'm sure it's not easy. Seek friends and people who you feel safe talking to, who are not going to shame you more, back into whatever it is you came out of. Just find yourself, man. I really do feel bad for these people, so bad. Every time I hear it, it hurts my heart to know that people went through this, especially the women. I don't know why, in particular, the women it hurts more, because I don't want to say that guys haven't gone through some really intense trauma, but for some reason it just feels like double for women. Like, because I don't think the system's designed for them at all. And so I feel like they just get twice as much of the crap that any guy does. And it's probably because, my kids are, primarily all women too. So maybe there's that, but
Like
yeah, I just feel bad for them.
Theology plus patriarchy woven into
Yes. So, I feel bad for them. And if any of them ever want to contact me just to talk, I'm totally okay with that. Absolutely. I don't have their shared experience by any doggone means, but if anything that I do or said helps them in any way, just to have a conversation, I'd be okay with it. I think you've had some really amazing guests on. There was one in particular who I think she was maybe Hispanic. Some of the stuff she talked about the whole Catholic thing and the statues and stuff. I just found that so fascinating, man.
That is a level of intensity I'm kind of glad I didn't get. But
Oh boy, yeah.
we'd see pictures, which I guess is you could argue, but when you literally see like the physical statue of
Yeah.
Jesus like bleeding out with a cut in his side and the thorns and the nails, and you think to yourself as a kid, like somebody literally had to be tortured and killed gruesomely, and I'm the reason, like it's my fault.
Yeah.
And then
That's
like not just
crazy, man. That is
the
so
gospel,
crazy.
but like every time you, even after you're saved, that every sin you do, basically the way they describe it is Christ paid for that one too. So even if like
Hmm.
I understand that I'm a sinner and Christ is my rescuer, he died in my place and I accept it as my substitute, now I'm saved, I'm in the right position with God because my sin issues dealt with. Christ paid the penalty. Then if you, once you're a Christian, then you sin again, and you're basically Jesus, you're saying to yourself, Jesus died for that sin too. So I now, having known how much he had to go through and be tortured because of me, I now have just done it to him again. And they used to talk about, it's like you went back in time, and with Jesus, like before they lifted the cross up, like when he's laying down and they just nailed the hammer, nailed the nails in his arms and feet, that it's like you went back in time and you grabbed a hammer too from the Roman soldier and you hammered it in just to give him a little bit of an extra, oh, it's like that's what you just did to Jesus. Like,
Yeah.
what the hell? Do you not understand how serious sin is? Like, that's the message you get your whole life. And so you feel like you're this,
Mm.
basically this ungrateful, horrible, wretched person that even after you've understood the gospel, you still strike the nails intentionally and repeatedly because you have a lustful thought or whatever. It's just crazy.
That is crazy. Again, every time you all talk about this stuff, it just really makes me happy that I did not grow up that way. I don't know who I would have been had I grown up that way. I'm certain I would be a completely different person.
Yeah.
Even my father not being in my life. I know for a lot of people they think that's a bad thing. Fathers should be in their children's lives. I think the right father should be in a children's life, not just any father. Just because you're a male and you have a penis doesn't make you a good man at all. Doesn't make you a father. None of that. And honestly, I told my father. He's since passed, but I told him years ago he was going on about something that had nothing to do with anything, and I just had enough. And I told him, it probably sounded cruel at the time, but I meant it. I said, I am glad you were not in my life because I turned out how I did because you were not there. Had he been there, maybe I'd have been the same person. I don't know, but I know who I am because he was not.
Mm. It's a powerful thought. Powerful thought. I think a lot about the idea of like the multiverses and the
Mm-hmm.
philosophical concept that maybe there's a billion different versions of us that have ever existed in different universes, and what if this, what if that. And I think a lot about that, like what if I'd gone, is there a version of Tim out there that's
Mm-hmm.
going to go to his deathbed, and he got really into it, he became the preacher, became the head pastor,
Pastor
you know, he
Tim.
he became the multiple author. He got on the radio, and everyone just said, he's doing the work of God, and that Tim is going to go to his deathbed thinking, I can't wait to get to heaven and see Jesus.
Yeah.
It's scary. I hope that version of if there is a multiverse, I hope there's another version of me that I hope in all multiverses I'm escaping Christianity. But
I have an interesting thought about that whole multiverse thing too. It's not so much the multiverse thing. My girlfriend and I were talking about this because she's spiritual. She doesn't believe in God and all that stuff either, but she has a spiritual bent, if you will. And I do not. She believes in past lives and things like that. I do not. But what I do think is that there's this possibility that through our DNA, every experience that our ancestors had, before us, and our ancestors, meaning just the people that led up to our parents, not the totality of our ancestry, right? So the lineage that led up to our parents, all of their memories, their experiences, all of that stuff gets recorded into their brains and into their DNA. And I think that stuff actually gets passed down to us as well. Now, we may not be able to actively access it, but it's still there, right? And just some random access memory thing in our brain, some doggone where, which could be the reason why some people are able to speak a another language that they never really learned somewhere or something or other. I don't think there's some spirit or some demon or somewhere doing that. I think it's just something that is unlocked for whatever reason somehow from that collective past. And I find that far more plausible. I have no evidence of any of that, whatsoever. I've never researched it or anything, but I find that far more plausible than any spiritual stuff, because I think we're all electrical machines in some way. Our brains are extremely complex. Our memories are extremely complex. And even the whole memory thing in dreams and all that stuff, you're talking about the AI and how, it makes weird fingers and all that stuff. I use AI quite a bit in my business because, like, for stock footage, a lot of what I have to find for my clients doesn't really exist necessarily. Somebody didn't shoot footage of a particular thing because my clients have a very specific business that they do. And so I then have to go in and either try to find something that somewhat matches, that I can use the context to make this footage look like it fits, or I can go to AI and actually create what I'm looking for, which sometimes it takes a few prompts to get something close enough. And it still looks fake, but it's definitely not just something just thrown in. It's interesting to see the AI stuff because I feel like it's the AI's dreaming. You know how you'll dream and, you'll be in a house somewhere and then this house just all of a sudden turns into something else. You're not where you were before. You didn't leave, but it just turns into something else. And I look at AI kind of doing the same thing. That's it dreaming the way we would dream, so to speak.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I love too thinking that basically it's almost like humans are the AI of the animal world, where our brains went into, like, we're imagining what if AI took over humanity, but in many ways it's almost like we took over the animal world. Well, like what happened? Well, like that concept, like we've already done it. We were like, consciousness is AI. Effectively, it's the animal world that's usually just focused on how do I find the next piece of meat, and how do I find the next load of peanuts to eat. All of a sudden it's like we're now dreaming about metaphysical stuff, and that's consciousness. That's like a version of AI almost. And it is fascinating to think, like, what would it be like if we could take that beautiful gift of consciousness and really not exploit it, but just really use it to step back from the edge of mythology and say, we have such a beautiful gift here. It's like, and we can really screw it up, or we can actually use it for something amazing. And I really hope that we do end up it catches your breath to think, how much the history of the world, so much was the same for so long. I mean, hundreds of thousands of years. And even in the last like 300 or 400 years, so much was in some ways the same. But yeah, like, what happened in the last 100 years? Like, what a crazy time to be alive. But you can also imagine at this point, we either blow ourselves to smithereens with our weapons, or we take this chance and say, we're going to do something absolutely amazing. And it feels like we're going 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction
100%.
At the moment. But I hope that we can shift that and actually take this seriously. It's a segue sort of to my last question.
Sure.
The idea of a secular society, a secular government, but a secular society. If everybody was like you, we could probably consider ourselves pretty close to being a secular society. What does that feel like to you when you hear that? I know we talked about some people aren't ready to be unplugged yet. Like, what would it take for our society to become, number one, able to just see through the garbage and toxicity of Christian nationalism? But, even if we eradicated that, there's still Muslim nationalism, and it's all over the place. But what do you think about when you think about a truly secular society? Does it appeal to you to get involved in trying to push for that? And what's your big dream for how we could go culturally if we truly rise to the occasion?
I don't want to get too involved, mostly because I just ain't got time for that. As much as I really believe is super important, right? I do. And me taking this time right now is a whole lot more involvement than I have ever taken before. Because, like I said, being silent to me is being complicit. But I don't want to dedicate intense amounts of time to it. I do want to contribute to it in small amounts, either through the financial stuff that I do for people, every now and then helping out with some video projects and that kind of thing, just to help them get their story along, whatever the case may be. That would be great. I would love to see a totally secular society, but I still want the religious people to have voice, because they're still going to be there. Like I don't want it to be the secular theocracy,
Yeah.
if you will. I don't want that. I don't think that'd be cool at all. I don't want anybody to not have a voice. And I think we all can, for lack of a cheesy phrase, get along. I think it's absolutely possible. And as dangerous as things are feeling right now, I don't want to say I'm glad that it's happening, but in a way, I'm glad that it's happening, only because it's making it much harder to deny that it's happening. Before, people could speculate, oh, that wouldn't happen. Oh, it's just conjecture. Oh, it's just speculating, blah, 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 blah. No, it's no speculating anymore. This is actually happening now. It's exposing a lot more than what was being exposed before. And it's really getting harder to say that it's not. People are still going to say that it's not, because they have their own motives for that. And the machine is constantly pushing back. Like this whole thing with the guy that shot the senators or whatever in Minnesota. Now they're saying they were left leaning. No, they weren't, man. But the scary part is so many people believe, oh yeah, see, yeah, they were leftists. It's like, good God, man. But the thing is, it's still harder. They have to work harder now to lie. And at some point, that's going to break. I mean, it's breaking now. The fact that you came out of your religion, the fact that so many people have come out, it can break. And I think by having voices like yours and so many others, it helps to make that break. And I'm going to do my part to help that. But I don't want to get, like, I have my own goals. And I don't want to sound selfish at all, but I still want to do my own thing. I'm 54, and I've spent a lot of time just doing other people's work, doing other people's stuff. And I just kind of want to live the rest of my life doing mine. But I like Spider-Man, if I'm going to quote my dad, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And so I do have a responsibility. I have this power to create the way I do. And so I think I also have a responsibility to help where I can.
I love it. I was just going to say, though, if you do get involved much, there is a little bit of an addiction that occurs. I mean, I feel like it's like the idea of once you free someone's mind, it's hard to not want to do more. You remember the end of Schindler's List, where he's just like,
I love that movie, dude.
I could have done more,
Yes.
the watch and everything. It's just like, I could have done more. Like, what else could I have done?
You just gave me goosebumps, man. I love that movie so much. I saw it. I didn't even know what it was. I saw it in theaters when it first came out, and I was floored. It was the first movie that I ever watched. I always stick around for the credits, always. I'm that nerd. So if you go to the show with me, anybody, we're sticking around till it's done, But it was the first one that I watched where nobody got up when it was done. It was so quiet. The music was just playing through the credits and whatnot. And I was like, oh my God. I actually stayed and watched it again, which is crazy because it's a 3-hour movie. But I loved it so much. The music, the power, the fact that it was all in black and white. I love that, except for the little girl with the red. I think they had 2 instances of red. The little girl, I think both revolved around that little girl. But that part in particular, when he kept saying, man, I could have done more. I just love that movie so much. And that scene in particular just has always struck me. Yeah. And I kind of feel like that now. Like if I could have done more, I suppose, the dreams that I did have of becoming a filmmaker and making big films and being the next, I call myself Spike Spielberg, being the next Spike Spielberg have kind of waned. I don't see that happen. I mean, it could happen, that's for sure. But at this point, I don't see it coming to that anymore unless some miracle happens. But yeah, I do feel like I have a responsibility with the abilities that I have to help at least other people's voices be heard.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing what gets put on your heart to do, and I'm sure it's going to be amazing either way. I was just going to mention one last thing. Speaking of movies, when you said you really like to be alone, I was thinking they should do a redo of Tom Hanks' Castaway, but in your case, it'd be like, I'm staying on the island.
Yeah, no, yeah,
leave me alone.
Help. Go away.
I am quite happy.
I see a plane, I'm hiding from the plane.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate so much you sharing your story. This has really been good. I'm going to have a bunch of links beneath this video. I'll link Durante's YouTube channel as well. We mentioned him a time or two.
Yeah.
Durante Lamar is doing great work, so please like and subscribe. I'll have the other links that we talked about for your stuff. But I really appreciate you being willing to share your story and your insights, and definitely look forward to connecting with you in the future, both publicly as well as maybe, who knows, maybe collaborating on some stuff. Before we wrap up, did you have anything else on your heart you wanted to share today?
Yeah. One last thing. You're in Georgia somewhere, right?
Yeah, I'm just north of Atlanta.
So I passed through Georgia not long ago. My daughter was moving from Florida to Michigan. And I don't remember what highway we were on, but I saw the most massive cross I've ever seen in my life on this thing. You probably know where I'm talking about. This thing was like the Sears Tower of crosses.
Hmm.
So when I hear Christians talk about how persecuted they are, I don't think so. Because it wasn't the Eye of Ra or something or another, it wasn't an Obama statue. It was a freaking cross. This thing is so massive. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to figure out what route we took and I'll let you know where it is. This thing, and I know I exaggerate sometimes, but I'm not exaggerating right now. This thing was so doggone, and it was several like that, several just really big crosses right along the expressway. You're not being persecuted, no matter what you think. Nobody else has a statue like that anywhere that I know of. I haven't been across the entire country, but man, that's it.
Yeah, I know there's a real big one in South Carolina. Past there's also one I know in a place called Milner, Georgia. It's a Rock Spring Church. I think it's like 120 feet. I was saying here, 120-foot cross.
Mm.
Yeah, but yeah, there's a couple of them around. I passed the one I passed is not that one, but the one in South Carolina. But it is pretty crazy. It's funny. Where I'm from, near Philadelphia, I went to a school in Lancaster County, which is sort of closer to central Pennsylvania, but it's Amish country. And so I would take a bunch of back roads because it's so pretty. You're driving through farmland, and it's just very, 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 very calming place to be. You smell a bunch of cow poop, of course, in the summer, but otherwise, it's a nice place to be. But just like signs, like they're just the Amish people are just putting signs up everywhere, and of course, it's really like straight for like repent or burn in hell. Like it's just like
yeah,
you know what they're saying. Confess your sins and confess Jesus as Lord. You're going to burn for it. But it is interesting how so much of society has this willingness to basically like put their beliefs on blast and say, I want to get in your face, but of course, if the tables were turned, like you better not get in my face, but I can get in your face. Christians are so obnoxious,
and they don't see it. They don't see it at all, which is really amazing to me. And yeah, that's really amazing.
Yeah, I remember growing up, we had a church near us with probably Methodist or Episcopal, but it had the big church bells. And I don't know when they stopped it. At some point they did. I'm glad they did. But I remember like you'd hear it every day, every hour, the church bells would go off. Like you'd hear it. I mean, till like they didn't do it at bedtime, of course, but all during the daylight hours, you'd hear it once an hour, this church bell stuff. And I was thinking, I always thought to myself, I kind of appreciated it as a Christian, but if a mosque was doing some kind of call to get out your prayer mat and pray to Allah and to Mecca, like you would really want them to shut that down. And you'd be very upset that you hear this audibly, like, why can't I just live my life in my community and not hear the Muslim call to turn to Mecca and pray? Like Christians doing the same thing. It is crazy, and it bothers me that that's the way our world has worked. And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to lose that anytime soon at this rate.
Not anytime soon, no. You brought back a memory. I remember that too when I was a kid. There, I don't know where it came from. There was a church not far. They used to do the same thing. We'd hear the bells almost every hour. I didn't really connect that until you mentioned that right now. But yeah, that was the same thing. And when I was in Desert Storm. I'm a Desert Storm war vet. Was the first time I actually heard the praying, the Muslim praying, and I actually thought it was beautiful. I didn't know what they were saying at all, but I liked to hear the voice. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's an interesting conundrum looking back at some of the more beautiful parts of Christianity. For those of us that escaped, there's some parts that still get us, and it's a hard thing because you want to kind of be like it's all toxic, it's all bullshit. But I mean, the music, you mentioned the music. I mean, there's some Christian music that's pretty intensely beautiful. I mean, it's all in the eye of the beholder. I'm more like the Baroque era, like the a cappella, deep, the chant, Gregorian chants, like that stuff. That stuff can bring me to tears still.
I love that stuff.
Everybody's different, but yeah, some stuff it just because you walked through it. Like when you had that music in your life as a Christian, some of it was what literally got you up in the morning or kept you sustained throughout the day, is just knowing this is how I remind myself that God is watching me and getting me through the day, despite the pain and the tears. He's carrying me. So you know that footprints in the sand poem. Have you ever heard that?
I use that lyric in one of my songs
Okay,
about the footprints in the sand. Yes. Uh-huh.
but you just grew up thinking, I know who's carrying me throughout these storms. And just once you leave, you kind of, even though you know now it was all imagination and fairy tales, you're like, that's what kept me alive. That's what kept me on the straight and narrow. And it's weird. We all, I think, have a very interesting and unique relationship with our past, especially with religious past stuff. But
Yeah.
well, thank you
Man,
so much.
amazing. Oh, you're welcome. Thank
Good
you.
to meet you. Yeah.
You too. You
Anything
too.
else? I know I probably cut you off. There anything else you want to add?
No, I'm good, man. It's because I could go on forever. Everybody tells me I talk too much, so I'm gonna shut up before this turns into a 5-hour interview. I can go.
I talk too much, Tim. Well, I'll just wrap up by saying maybe speaking of Zernul Shackelford. Zernul, thank you so much. Really, really great to meet you. You're awesome. I love your skill set again. Very impressed with that, and I can't wait to see what great things come from your journey. But thank you so much for sharing your story today. Really good to meet you.
You're welcome. It's been an honor coming out to you there, Tim. I appreciate it, man. The cat's out of the bag now. I can't put it back in. I'm okay with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much again. Have a great day.
Be safe.